Well, all right. Here we are. It is one more Monday. Like, it's March. Can you believe it? Like, it feels like 2024 is just like being pulled right out from underneath our feet. But we're here for it. We're here to see it all. Um, Good morning, everyone. We have, before we begin, we'll take a moment and thank our top sponsors. We have so much to talk about. It's very difficult to even choose where to begin. We want to thank FPEA for being here this whole time with us as one of our top sponsors, and we're glad to have them on board. We're looking forward to the convention. I know I even spoke to a parent from Georgia this week who is moving down because they're being stationed down here, and they're excited about everything that's happening in Florida. And they wanted to know where to find community and all these kinds of things. And they were super excited to discover the FPEA convention as we were talking about it, and as a way to kind of get their start. I know that a lot of people have gone to that convention and found hope in their journey to, or the confidence to begin their home education journey, or particular resources that they needed to keep going or do it better. Lots of cool speakers lined up, lots of fun stuff to come. So we want to thank them for being a sponsor here with us. And I keep doing that. Well, good morning. Sorry. Good afternoon, Brenda. I get one day where we have one special podcast where I got to say good morning, and it's like the habit broke. And I'm back to say a good morning at noon. Good day, Brenda. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Good.
Can you believe
Crystal?
it's been 2 months since you moved to Tallahassee?
No,
It's
it's like
crazy.
flown
It
by.
went so fast.
Yeah. It's been fantastic, though, I have to say. Um, Lots of very interesting experiences, lots of really cool people that we've met. I feel like I've gone back to school because I've been in like learning mode, constantly trying to figure out what happens next and what happens, where does this come from and where does that happen and what do we do here and there, and okay, now we wait, okay, now we go. It's really, it's really wild. It's a wild kind of roller coaster ride, but it is
Most,
exciting.
most people have no idea how long the session is and how daily you have to stay on top of the movement of the
Oh yeah.
bills that you're watching and pop up right like now. The
Yeah.
amendments come in at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or later for the committees that are going to be the next day. So sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
have to be in gear the next day with speakers to show up and all,
Yeah.
all sorts
Yeah.
of things that are going on. And
Yeah.
thank goodness Crystal's been one of our key people because she could throw on some clothes and grab the kids and
Throw
off to
some
the
clothes on the
Capitol,
kids. Yeah.
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 before having a resident, what would you call her? Testifier,
Yeah. Yeah.
speaker. I'd have to
Well,
spend the evening prior to that trying to round up some people that were available to come to the Capitol. It was hard work. Now we have our own resident speaker.
I definitely say that it has made me consider whether or not January to March or somewhere in that range is our new summer. Because it's made it really challenging to schedule any kind of normalcy during this. Because at any given moment, it's just a now be here, let's go, drop everything, we've got to go do this. And
Grab your
here's a
coat
phone
and tie.
call.
We're on the way.
Yeah, right. Governor's office has said they can give you 15 minutes. Go. It's like, well, we're not doing any of this and this and this and this. We're doing this right now. So,
And I hate to break this news to you, but your summer is going to extend to 4 months and
yeah.
probably the next one because they typically have committee meetings 2 months in advance
Oh, right.
and then the session. And what we've done is overlay the two this time, which is make it very
Oh,
difficult to get in to meet with legislators. That's bad, but it does condense the time that they have to be in Tallahassee. I hope they don't like this
interesting.
schedule because it's really hard on
Yeah.
us trying to get to the right people to get
Hmm.
messages through. And thankfully, we've had some home educators who have reached out to us and said, oh, we know Representative so and so, or we know Senator so and so. So they would give those people our name, or they would be our go through to meet with them, because they have text numbers and all of that, which we don't
Mm-hmm.
have. And we're accumulating something. But guess what? Elections are coming up and people are turned out. So the ones that you were in connection with before may not
Right.
be here next
May
year.
not
And then
even
the
be here.
staff's changed. So it's a
Yeah.
constant process of trying to make connections and build
Yeah.
relationships. And people who aren't involved in this process have no idea how much work it is.
I didn't.
You didn't know what you were getting
That's why
into.
you kept going, are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not my choice. It is now, but I have been called into this very clearly, so it's one of those things where I just say yes and I'm here. No stranger to the hard work.
Yeah, I've
Look,
also been I just wanted to say I've also been so grateful for the parents. I'm grateful for the online community we've been building, because
yes.
every time that I went to speak, there was at least one other parent who had reached out to us ahead of time and also managed to show up to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you to those parents who have done that this season. Some of you drove hours both ways to
And
be
Yes.
there at the committee
some of them
meetings.
had a 2-hour notice to get there and
Yes, and
managed
Yeah.
to get there.
some
Yeah,
of you
well,
took off in the middle of your work day to come over because you live local, but still you dropped everything to just come show up last minute to speak.
yeah.
So thank
It
you to the parents who were there and who were speaking.
yeah, absolutely.
And
It does not go unnoticed or unappreciated,
And
for
that's
sure.
so important in our work, because
Mm-hmm.
a lobbyist can stand up there and say, this is what's wrong with the bill.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, yeah, yeah, we hear you. You get parents up there with children and their faces, and they're looking at real people that are being
Yeah.
affected by this legislation. And it makes a huge difference. And so
Yeah.
if you don't stay in touch with us and tell us that you can come, or that you know somebody that you can contact, it's not nearly as effective, even though we're here doing the job we need to do. We just need your help. So
It
please
does.
stay in touch.
Yeah. It does make a difference. I remember this last committee meeting we were at, appropriations Chair Rusan was he spoke at the end of I can't remember whose testimony it was. I think it might have been Crystal's.
It was mine. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said, you give passion and reality to what would otherwise just be black and white ink and paper. So it does make a difference when they see the faces of people or hear their particular lives and how what they're voting on and deciding to do impacts.
And the children make such a difference, because
Oh yeah, they do.
typically, and I can't say that I've seen one that doesn't fit this, the children are so well behaved and so attentive while they're sitting in those committee meetings, which sometimes are pretty boring. Uh,
For the kid,
even
from a kid's
even to
perspective, yeah.
us, even to us, if we don't know what the issue is,
Right.
and very boring to kids. But
Yeah.
they'll bring a book or have some coloring paper or something to entertain themselves, and they just are so well behaved. It makes such an impression on the legislators,
Mm-hmm. It
that
does.
you don't get junior high kids coming up here acting as well as some of the younger homeschool kids.
It, it does make a difference, and there's things that you can't see sitting at home on watching it through the My Florida channel, because the camera follows the people speaking, and they do a close in angle. But there were a couple of times during that committee meeting that some of the senators got up and came and like sat next to our kids and kind of talked to them, and then went back to their chairs, and that kind of connection is really important, but it's stuff that you don't even get to see happen sitting at home. There are a lot of things that happen off camera that you cannot see. And it can be very insightful as to, you know, who people are who are willing to listen to you or hear you or pass something on. Right now, everything's just kind of following a very, very heavy, momentous uh, motion. It's almost just like it's in full swing, and it's just going to bulldoze you over if you stand in front of it. But we did manage to see some kind of movement, especially on one of our key issues. We had last week we had 2 podcasts because we were Speaker of the House Paul Renner decided he wanted to come on and make an announcement, but then while we were doing our regular podcast on Monday last week, he wasn't available because he was meeting with the governor. Obviously, they were meeting. I think the news has pretty much spilled the beans about what they were meeting over. But that meeting took over an hour. It was longer than our podcast, I think.
Yeah, it was about an hour and a half, and he told me it was going to be
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Yeah. But it took them a while to iron out whatever it was they were discussing, which we all now know is most likely HB1 and how it was going to be vetoed and what they would need to do if they wanted something like that to keep going. And that looks like it took the form of HB3, which we can talk about a little bit today, but it was exciting to see a little bit of movement on one of our key issues, which was the PEP scholarship and the equipment language being restricted back to or prohibited back to the 4 core subjects, and how they were looking to amend that out. And we're still hopeful to see him keep his word and see an amendment come through that will strike that language. Looks right now like, I don't want to like speak out of turn, but that bill is sitting and it may idle. And at that point, go ahead.
I was going to say, but the companion bill is positioned for it to go on special order calendar, but it's going to have to be pretty quick because
Pretty quick.
they once they do whatever they're going to do, it still has to go back over to the House for them to take it up before it can go on to the governor's office. So,
and we have 4 days left, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, that's a lot.
So watch the special order calendar every afternoon after session.
Mm-hmm.
And if it gets on the special order, then we know there's a go for it. If not, if the bill doesn't pass, then we're still in the same position that we were last year with all of the things that are in the purchasing guide. And the speaker will still have kept his word, which he said we were going to keep status quo.
Status quo, right.
So what that means is that all the other things that were in the bill that were good will also die. So
yeah, there were some.
We don't
there
know.
were some
At this
favorable
point,
things.
there's a lot of horse trading going on that we can't see or be privy to.
Yeah.
Staffs are negotiating with each other. I mean, down to literally words they're choosing. I've been involved where I'm fighting with staff members, the last 2 days to get in words that would clarify something. And I've been successful most of the time, but sometimes, it's not effective. So there's just a lot of things going on right now. We're sitting here on our hands waiting, but boy, when it comes down, it's going to move fast.
Yeah, and the last thing that we wanted to see was that program start and then have immediate restrictions, especially such sweeping prohibitive restrictions. So we're happy about that. There were other things in the bill, especially for military families, that we really liked that were there. So we're hopeful that the bill doesn't just die, but either way, he will have kept his word, and we'll see what next year brings. That brings us to we have 460 that we've been watching, and we have SB460 and SB1596, both that we've been watching, and both of these have to do with career and technical and minors and curfew, which also happens to be about employment and career. It looks like 1596, which was Senator Burgess's bill, is stalled out. I don't see. I'm looking here. I mean, looks the last thing that I can see that happened on it was the end of January.
Is
and I
that the
don't.
House bill or the Senate bill
That's
you're
the
looking at?
Senate bill. That's the Senate bill.
Yeah. It had one more committee to go through. It hadn't been heard in regulations, right?
Yeah, it says now in regulated
Regulated industry.
industries.
Yeah,
But
there's
then
no more committee meetings, so
that was as of January 30th, and nothing has
Mhm.
happened since then.
that one is dead because
The
the
House
House bill was not moving even as much as the Senate bill was. I really was
Mhm.
hoping for that, and that's going to be
Yeah.
something that now that they brought this out, I think homeschoolers really need to support that, and we need to
Mhm.
get more reaching out to more legislators before next session to support that bill.
Mhm.
Because what this did was carve out an exception for home education students and virtual education students to be able to work during school hours.
Mhm.
And I can tell you for a fact, because I've had about a week's discussion with the person at the Department of Labor that handles these waivers, and he's so out of it, and is not going to change anything. He didn't even know homeschool was legal, and how could we be teaching our kids at home? This was just last year. So it's literally going to take a legislative change. But there are a couple of things that need to be addressed that I get a call once every 5 years on, and it's just not worth the effort that it's going to take to get the change. But this bill was initiated by Senator Burgess,
Mhm.
and he must understand the issue, or somebody in his district had an issue with it. And it makes no sense if you understand home education and virtual education. The kids don't necessarily work during school hours on
Mhm.
their lessons, whatever those happen to be. So they could work when the other kids couldn't work, and they could get a maximum of the number of hours that they're allowed to work in a week, because they're
Mhm.
not all competing. Those minors aren't all competing for the same work hours. So it would be a real boost to them if we could get this passed. So I think that should be on the agenda for us next year.
To watch that for sure, absolutely. Especially since one of the things that it did was, like you were saying, give an exception for home education students with certain meeting certain criteria that they were able to work outside of the normal curfew hours that one would normally have during the school year. So it would open up opportunities for them if they needed to. The other thing that it did that I thought was interesting, and I don't know if this is why it stalled or not, but it required counties and municipalities to recognize certain persons as journeymen for specified occupations if such persons meet specified criteria. So, like if they had obtained their journeyman in one place, they wouldn't need to go and register and submit and pay to have that certification redone in other places. It would carry over. And
Was
I
that on
think,
SB460?
mm-hmm,
Yeah,
yeah.
that I was.
No, that's on.
It's on
Yes,
Burgess.
that's on 460. Yes, that's
Yeah, you
correct.
you mixed
Yeah.
the two up. I was talking about
Oh, did I?
1596.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I did mix the two. Yeah. No, that one's still moving. I had opened them. Oh, I did mix them up. Sorry. You're right. Let me see.
That's
Bill
okay. At the
text.
end of session, it's like the toilet flushes, and I can't
Yeah.
remember one bill number
Yeah.
that we worked on during session. I could remember HB1 last year because it was one, but
Yeah.
when
Well, I
you've got
have the
Senate
tabs
and House
open.
bills you're watching and they're moving through, and where's something in the
Yeah.
status, and then you got to remember all of the
Hmm.
key points in each bill. Sometimes it's just
Yeah.
like overload, and I'm done when session
It's a
is
lot.
over.
I have a million tabs open, and I'm like down in the language, so I didn't see like the heading of which bill it was, and I
Yeah.
think I clicked back on the other one. I thought it was in this one. Anyway, yeah. So they're two separate bills. One of them does the curfew, and the other one does this in particular, with a couple of other things. It's nice to see 460 still moving. Keeping our eyes on that one. 1596. I'd love to see that one come back.
So
I'd love to see another go.
basically, 460 is a career and technical bill
Mm-hmm.
that allows kids to work in construction, um, prior to whatever the other age was at 18, they can work at 16, I think.
Right. It's 16 now. Yeah. With this bill, it would be 16 with certain circumstances. It restricts ladders above 6 feet, and it restricts them from working on roofs of any kind, which I thought was really funny. Not that that's funny, but the way that the PTA came out and just kept regurgitating "you're gonna kill our children," the death rates of children who work on roofs, you know, as
But they
opposed
don't
to
work
like
on
older.
roofs now. They're not allowed to work on roofs.
It's almost like they didn't read the bill; they're just categorically opposed, which was an interesting. I think that there's a lot of anti freedom and home education, because it's almost like we want your kids to stay here and under control. We want them to stay here and we don't want them out there doing these different things. We finally got a lockdown on your kids, and we're not going to let go of that for anything.
Yeah, we want them in the seat for the number of hours they have to, and they can't do anything except go to college. That's their
Yeah.
only options.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll pledge allegiance, but we can change which flag it's to and things like that. I don't know. So there's something to be said for watching these other bills and very carefully, taking note, but also realizing that there are people who have grown comfortable having access and control over our kids. And I thought it was really nice what Representative Masulo said when he said that the parents we've been working really hard with different bills to put the power back into the hands of parents and out of the hands of institutions. And I can't echo, if you didn't get a chance to see that video, that live stream, that was the Tuesday one where we had Speaker of the House Paul Renner and Representative Masulo on, and he was the chair of appropriations, I believe, in the House when we went.
Employment and education, I believe.
Was it employment and education? Okay.
I don't know. I'll look it up and let
We'll
you
double
know.
check. Yeah. But I remember him. I do remember that because we barely ran into him just before we got up, and I wasn't sure. The interaction was so terse and quick. I wasn't certain that he was.
Yeah, it was education and employment.
Okay, it was education and employment. Okay. Yeah,
He was in the appropriations committee, but he was the chair of education.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, but it was so quick, I wasn't sure where he stood on a lot of things. Especially since when we met with the House, things just kind of got rapid fire passed through. But it was very comforting to hear him say that on that call, to know that, like, okay, this is actively what they're trying to do, is place the power and the decision-making priority squarely in the hands of parents. And so we applaud that. We applaud that for sure. So, and that brings us to, I think, the last remaining thing on our list for today was what, HB3, perhaps?
Yeah, and if we have any time left, I want to talk about the name change for our new career and technical component. But
Okay.
we can say that it's not something we have to do today.
We have time, so it's up to you.
So you talk about HB3. That's
okay, so
in your
HB3
technology field and not mine.
HB3 saw some massive amendments, literally just before we got on. In fact, I don't see any more on my email right now, but yeah, just before coming on, it saw some massive amendments. And this one is online access to materials harmful to minors. HB1 was online protections for minors, and HB1 was the bill that we sat with Senator Grohl on Monday, and she walked through a Q&A with us about the various points and discussion points that they had. I think that all of what she said is still relevant. What it sounds like happened, and I believe Governor DeSantis tweeted that he vetoed this bill, HB1, in favor of a better bill that was coming. And I think that what has happened is they took a lot of the criticism from their meeting with him and amended HB3 to address those criticisms. And it looks like the change, one of the major changes, it looks like, is I'm have all my tabs. Here we go. The ages are it's not 16 now, it's 14 and under is what it looks like. That was one of the big changes. And one of the other big changes that it looks like would be that parents are given even more authority to intercede for their child, to make a request to have content expunged. So the platforms are not allowed to keep content that is personally identifying whenever they realize that they have an account that is not approved. So they have an account for someone who is 14 and under, and they've identified that through their various means and ways that they have. Because they have a lot of ways of figuring out who interacts with who and how they watch that, and how much usage. They have a lot that they watch. They can gauge with a relative amount of certainty. They can flag accounts and then follow up on them. And when they find one, they're required to shut it down because they're not allowed to enter. Basically, the bill makes it so they're not allowed to enter into a contract with minors under 14 and under. And this, or 14 and under, would be HB 3. Sorry. And originally it was 16. So now parents are also able to initiate that on behalf of the child, and then they're given additional. They spelled out additional. Where is it at? I'll have to go to my email to get the exact ones, but they spell out additional protections that they have that the parents have over the child, over the child's accounts, or on behalf of the child being able to do certain things. And so I think that was
So I want to ask you a couple of questions on what you just said. Is that okay? Are you finished?
Yes, I am. Let me grab the email that has the amendment so that I can refer to it, but go ahead and ask.
Okay, when you said they initiate the contract on behalf of the child, contract for those of us that are not techie people is when you click on and say, I agree to something, then you've just created a contract, right?
Right. So a lot of people aren't aware that when you use a social media platform, you're actually engaging in a contract with the company, right? So you're getting access to all of their tools, all of their intellectual property, all of the platforming and algorithmic connections that you're able to use at your disposal. And then what you give them is your information. And then they take that and they sell that to advertising companies, and there's money, and lots of money that they then gain from that interaction from you. So they take the contract that they have with you, you agree to it, and you sign on. And then there's like TikTok's terms of service and agreement are even more, I don't want creepy. Let's just flat out say it. You give them access to every file name on that device that you're using it on, and you give them permission through the device that you're accessing it on to connect with other devices and detect and connect with other devices connected to that device. So it goes further beyond what even Facebook's and Instagram's terms of service and conditions, or Snapchat's, etc. It's wild. I think they just know that people are mindlessly clicking in and able to just go, yeah, I want to do the next dance TikTok challenge. But they want it so bad. And because they're not putting all of the content in front of you, yeah, sure, they might make you scroll down until the little button that's grayed out becomes accessible, but they can't make you read it. And people don't realize that you're entering into a contract and that they're getting something for it. Hey, Dina, how are you? And so that's what this bill is about. So you don't
get access though unless you agree, correct?
Correct. Yeah. If you say I don't agree, then You can't finish creating your account. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, according to what you've just read, and you haven't had time to completely study it because it came out last night after 5 o'clock, but showed up publicly this morning. So, how do you think are parents going to be able to amend the contract in some way? How would that work that parents would have control over that?
So if a parent would be able to contact the social media provider and say, my child is under 14, you have to terminate this account. And so they could initiate that on behalf of their child, the
Terminate
termination.
it.
Yeah, they can't enter into it.
And
for
then
them.
you said that they could erase the stuff that's already there.
Yes, when a social media company has meets the criteria that requires them to delete an account, they have to be thorough in that deletion. They're not allowed to keep autofill information. They're not allowed to keep cookies or personally identifying information of any kind. They're required to scrub all of that. Yeah, I'm trying to find the exact language. So it can allow the account holder who is younger than 14 to terminate, but it can also allow the confirmed parent or guardian to do that as well. And then they have a certain period of days where they're required to complete that task within. And then it says permanently delete all personal information held by the social media platform relating to the terminated account, unless there are legal requirements to maintain such information. So they're required to scrub and delete all personal information held by the social media platform. I mean, that would include pictures, information, birth dates, anything that identifies them or pertains to them.
But my thought is they may not actually get rid of it on their platform. They may not make it available or use it anymore. But what you just read sounded like they would keep it in case there's some sort of legal reason they'd have to produce it at a later point.
Right. Unless there's a legal requirement, not a legal reason, but like it might be judicious for them to keep certain information, but if they're not required to keep it, they're not allowed to keep it. So that would be. I
was thinking if there was a criminal case ongoing, but it was maybe months after they deleted the account, they couldn't produce the information if they still didn't have it held someplace.
Yes. If they're legally required to keep it for a case or something like that, then yes, they would have to keep it until no longer required. There is an important part of the bill, though. It's lines 86 through 90 of the new amendment. I don't know what line it'll be once it gets all lumped in together, but it does say that
go ahead, and then I'll ask you something.
Okay. A social media platform shall prohibit a minor who is 14 or 15 years of age from entering into a contract with a social media platform to become an account holder unless the minor's parent or guardian provides consent for the minor to become an account holder. So there's the parental window, and that applies specifically to 14 and 15.
I wonder if they have a way of ensuring that it's actually the parent providing.
I had the same thought.
Like, for example, with Messenger kids, they can be sure because the kid has to create an account through the parent's account. Like the parent has to actually create the account for them, and their account then exists inside the parent's account.
It's a sub-account underneath your account, yes.
If they do it that way for 14 and 15-year-olds, I can see how they could control that. But otherwise, what's to stop a 14 or 15-year-old from... I mean, I'm sure they'll...
Having a friend be the parent?
Yeah, or, maybe they have to... Maybe the parent has to already have an account for them to basically send a verification to the parent's account that the parent has to respond to or something like that. But they're going to have to figure out how to ensure that that's actually happening, you know.
I mean, I don't want to brainstorm on live, but I know many ways around. I of the things that I know that are already in place in other platforms, thinking of like Facebook, and there's a bunch of different platforms. I was even talking with someone the other day about how there are certain platforms that kind of sort of meet the criteria and then don't, and they're wildly used by youth. Anyway, the
implementation will be interesting, right?
Implementation will be very, very interesting because there are many ways around. There are just many ways around this, especially one of them being that we live in Florida. And one of the key issues that I keep bringing up when I'm speaking with others about this bill behind the scenes is that, VPNs they're not only, I think people have kind of said, well, yeah, not everybody knows how to use those though, but all of the influencers on YouTube that I know that are in that young adult range, that young person kind of burgeoning into adulthood, a lot of them have VPNs as sponsors, and they give a full 30-second or 60-second commercial to them every episode. And I see it a lot in the middle of their podcasts or their shows. And it's really, really important to remember that those right now provide a relatively easily accessible skirt around for all of this, because it'll make it look like you're not a Florida resident when you sign on. And then this is for Florida. This is a Florida law. So it's not a national law. This is just for Florida people. So it also creates interesting issues with, military families who maybe have had them and then they move here, right? And that's not addressed. So, I mean, it is. They're just not allowed in Florida to hold an account with someone that meets these criteria. So it'll be interesting to watch all the different ways in which this plays out. And there are tons of things to keep your eyes on. I do appreciate what they're attempting to do, and I appreciate the fact that they're not trying to make it where the parents or the child is somehow engaging in illegal activity by having an account, that it is the companies who are responsible for that. We do have some questions here, though. Someone said, how would we, Debbie says, how would we know if they deleted the content? That's a great question. We won't, you as a parent, so the way that the URL strings work, when they remove the account, it removes the URL strings attached to that account. So whenever you go to search something up inside of, say, like Facebook or Instagram, the URL strings that existed, once deleted, won't allow anyone to access it. But that doesn't mean that it's gone from their servers. You won't necessarily, I don't know how they're going to police that, but you as a user won't be able to tell the difference on your end as to whether or not your child's content has been scrubbed and deleted, or if it's just inaccessible. Still there, but there's no URL route that takes them to it. It's a great question. I do think it's one that's very important. There's a good chance that you might even start seeing some softwares and some software developers emerge that might help parents figure that out. I do know this in the community of young people, especially with gaming and streamers and things like that. They have developed a bunch of apps and tools that allow them to basically ping a server from a game developer to know what changes they're making to a game in a patch before those changes even go live. And then they have their theories, and there's a whole bunch of YouTube content that even exists on like what the company is going to do next and what I think they should do and all of this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of data mining tools that are out there, and I'm quite certain you're going to start to see some commercial use and popularity of use increase as parents go, well, I want to know if they really scrubbed it. $29.99, and you can find that out. You know what I mean? Like, you're probably going to see some of those emerge, is what my guess would be. Debbie says, my kids have had multiple accounts on platforms. If kids want to do something, they will figure out a way. You're not wrong. Deline says, these kids are better at it than their parents, not mine. I think because I spend a lot of time here, and maybe it's worthwhile for us to do some workshops on this kind of thing to help educate parents what the workarounds are. My brain just works that way. I always think about those loopholes. As a gamer, that's one of the things we do is figure out, okay, here are the rules of the game. How do I break it? That's literally what we do. That's what gaming is. These are the rules of chess. How do I bend them to my advantage? It's just kind of par for the course. But anyway, I digress. You got me monologuing, and I'm not a Disney villain.
There's also, I don't know whether this bill is fully fleshed out, but many times when bills pass, they give certain departments just automatically have the power to write rules. I'm not sure where this one would go, to which department would oversee this one, whether it's in the law enforcement, FDLE. I don't know who this will go to, but often they write rules to fill in those holes that the legislature didn't address. So that's something we'll have to watch on this bill going forward, just to see what the rules they write to do that. I know with the scholarships, all the laws that aren't specifically spelled out, the home education laws, only one time back in 1991 did it go to a department to figure out how something was going to work. We had to tell them we were going to sue them if they did it the way they wanted to, but that was the only encounter we had, because we were very specific in the details we put in the statute. Mm-hmm. And it just has stood without any rules over time. But that's something that'll be interesting to see if the state departments have experts in the area of technology that can know some of the things that Jason.
Well, I mean, you saw that in one of the departments, someone didn't even know home education was legal.
Right.
So like, we are fighting, I think in some areas we're fighting an uphill battle, because a lot of the stuff being written is not by people who are in it.
Right.
Just to be fair. I don't know that they want to go home all day after writing legislation and doing this and reading numbers and collecting charts and all of that to really think about how, kids playing video games are able to do this or do that, or the ads that come into them through video games are not technically social media, but they're still accessing your child with the information. And some of it's very, very predatory. I think I saw an ad recently in a game that I was playing where they're basically saying like, oh, you're having trouble getting your hands on cash, just download this app and do this and this and this, and you can get $750 right away. And it's like young people, late teens, early 20s talking about it. And I'm like, that is terrible advice. That is a horrible way to get your hands on money. What is going on?
Wow.
But, kid wants a PlayStation, kid wants, that has access to an app, goes in. It's not a social media app. So there's a lot of issues. And I think one of the key things to watch for as we move forward is what nationally is happening. I think everybody has had the power of the internet in their pocket, and it was not this robust and fine-tuned when we first got access to it, right? Now, the tool we have been comfortable wearing on our hip has turned into this tool that can launch missiles and satellites, put people in space. And it wasn't that when it started. It was messages and emails and, basic information searches, etc. And it's so much more now. There are ways to not have there are ways to literally connect to a cloud computer and then have that cloud computer run the apps. So there are programs where if I don't want to download the Adobe software and I don't want to download this video game because it eats up my hard drive and I don't want to download all of these things, I can buy a service and my computer can connect to a cloud computer that has the specs that'll run all of those programs, and I run that computer through my computer. They're not going to be able to trace down a lot of this stuff. And yes, your children know how to do that because that's how they're getting their hands on more powerful equipment when they sit at home and mom or dad says no to that upgrade or this or that or the other. Anyway, there's a lot to watch. I think nationally we're watching laws be talked about and come over from the congressional hearings that we see about. We have other states that are kind of watching. Florida's kind of first in a lot of areas. This is one of them. And I think a lot of people are waiting to see how this pans out, to see what they might do. And it's going to be interesting because what Florida law, if national law says something else, federal law says something else, Florida law and federal law will potentially bump heads on certain things. So seeing that play out as well is going to be interesting. So it's a wild, wild west, and they're coming for your kids. No.
Yeah.
But they have access, and we didn't realize when we bought that first iPhone or BlackBerry back in the day that let me send emails, messages, and look stuff up, that it was this. And so access has been granted and normalized, and then the tools got infinitely more powerful. And now the question is, should access be that normalized? Or is this something that might take some training before we dump it into the hands of a child, Anyway. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where all the laws end up landing, and especially on a national level. The hearings, if you're not watching those hearings, pay attention, and pay attention to Discord. Because Discord is one of those apps that is a very popular app among young people for communication, sharing information, content, connecting, streaming to each other, playing. Like they'll use it as a live chat tool while they play their games, and it does not fit these definitions of a social media app. It does not have infinite scroll. It does not have an algorithm that feeds information. So
Yeah.
I don't know that they're going to do that with the app. That's not the function and form
The
of
way
Discord.
that Discord is structured, it doesn't even have a feed. It has individual chat threads that the members can communicate on, but it's not like presenting you other people's posts in a feed for you to scroll. You have to actually go into the threads and read. It's almost like text messaging, but on a broad scale, like a group text.
So all the things that parents are concerned about with bullying, harassing, content that's not safe for their child and things like that, these will still exist, and they will find other places to exist that are outside of the definitions in this bill. So if you're a concerned parent and you want to keep tabs on it, I definitely say keep your eye on Discord. It's discord.gg. Keep your eyes on that one. It's something to watch, and be mindful of whether your kid uses it or not. I'm not saying like to be fearful of it, because every server is independently controlled by the person who launched the server. So it's not something like Facebook. It's not something like TikTok or Snapchat. But I think the only places where it does fit is, you could argue that it kind of fits the forum rule that's in here, and you can argue that they spend copious amounts of time such that satisfy the requirements in this amendment. Outside of those two, it doesn't really fit the rest of the definitions. So, but it's a very, very popular app. Very popular. Has been for a while. Anyway, I could bore people to death on this subject and topic for like hours and not even scratch the surface of what I really know about this stuff. But I don't want to do that to any of the people on our live stream today. So are there any other kind of questions about any of this that you want us to dive into?
if there are no questions, then I'm going to dive into the other item that I told you I wanted to mention.
Okay. I haven't seen any additional questions come in through the comments. If they do, I'll venture back to it.
Okay.
But go ahead and move forward with what
All
you're
right.
doing.
We have a large vision with the Home Education Foundation. We've served all sorts of parents that direct the education of their children, those in private schools, those in home education programs. We worked really hard to get the Gardner Scholarship wording right and all of the ways that parents could spend their money. And then when they merged the two, we were working on that merge, trying to keep the parents' rights as broad as possible. And then PEP, we've really been super active even after the legislation in just trying to help implement that program for parents that got it and educate those who are thinking about applying for it.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the work that we do is not technically lobbying. Lobbying is influencing legislation or influencing rules at the department when they write the rules. And that's maybe, I'd say, 15% of what we do. Maybe not even that much, considering how much time
The last
the
2
three
months.
of us spend answering questions and helping and calling, the community college and state colleges, trying to get dual enrollment reset for these PEP
Certainly.
kids. All that is just education stuff. So until Crystal and Jason came on board to help, I just did that under the umbrella of HEF because it was just more paperwork. But we have the vision of trying to even broaden things more than just education in answering questions on existing things. We want to be creative, and we want to help parents see so that they can help their kids see all of the career opportunities they have outside of the state colleges and universities, because we pretty much know about those. They may not know about the industry certifications and career programs, but it's easy to research that through your state college and get an AAS degree for your child in a career. But what we want to do, and we need your help on this, is to find opportunities for kids to get into a career that he or she may not know about, that would not require a 4-year degree, maybe not even a 2-year degree. Not that we're trying to say don't go to college. We would just want you to know there are other options out there.
Certainly.
One of the things that, and I've mentioned these before, but just recently, one of our board members said, oh, there's a pilot training school in Sanford, Florida. Well, I didn't know about that. Maybe other people who are into being a pilot or their children want to be a pilot would know about that. Mm-hmm. So what we want to do is to provide a hub where we can advertise and direct people to these various places. We already mentioned and talked about in a previous podcast about AM Skills that we did a discovery day there. And one of our board members is working really hard to try to expand that so that we can even bring that into the homeschool community beginning in 9th grade to train for some of those basic skills and knowledge they need to be earlier. So we're working on a bunch of different things to help home educated families with career options for their students. So today, it may have happened last week and I just didn't check, but we have now changed the name of, legally in Florida, the name of Zeal for Learning to HEF CONNECT, Inc. And so it is a 501c3. So donations to that will be a charitable donation. I'm working on getting the name changed for soliciting charitable donations. But if you know of somebody that has money left over from a campaign and they're not wanting to run again, and you know them personally, can you ask them to donate to HEF Connect, because they will get a charitable donation. Candidates are allowed to donate to 501c3s with leftover money. That's a quick and easy way to get some charitable donations to continue to build what we're trying to do. We need opportunities. It could be somebody out there in our community knows how to write grants, and they know of grants that might be ones that we could utilize in building what we're trying to build. It's hard to get something off the ground and get it started. So we know of a few avenues we can put up there, but we would really like to make this a robust website. And Jason's going to handle, we got some back end things we've got to do, like moving the checking accounts and changing the names on those. But we're working on ways to make it easier for us to raise funds to be able to help you in more ways than we've been able to. And then all of the education part that we're doing now currently under the lobbying of HEF, we're going to be moving all of that over into the HEF Connect so that we can use that as a way for parents to donate and get a charitable contribution. It's not quite there, but I'm excited because we've now done the first step, and now everything else we can work on. And I think probably, Jason, wouldn't you think by maybe the beginning of summer we'll have the component on the website? And
probably. I'm going to try to have it up in time for the FPEA convention. Saying that out loud puts me on a deadline. But there are things that we have to structurally map out for the site, like where will the resources tab go in a way that makes sense for people to find it? Where will this tab go? Where will that tab go? What you're probably going to end up seeing is the orientation of the menu might change, and we might end up having HEF lobbying and HEF Connect as two ways to kind of peruse through the site, and a lot of the support and things like that we have will probably end up being found through the HEF Connect end of the site. There's also a potential for maybe just making the entire site predominantly HEF Connect and giving a smaller section of the site to the lobbying information. The downside with doing it that way is I feel like we might lose some of the emphasis on the history of HEF, the history of home education in Florida, why we exist and things like that. And I don't want to diminish that as a part of why we exist, because it's the core function of truly why any of this exists. And Brenda has been putting so much work over the last 40 years into that. And I hesitate to do anything that would diminish that torch. However, she's right in that 80% of the work that we've been doing over the last year, Crystal and I, and Brenda, has been fielding calls and working with connections or helping provide community support for home education families and parent-directed opportunities that aren't technically lobbying. And so finding a way to split those out and clearly communicate those differences and allow people to also donate to a 501c3 was the kind of main push for this. So we'll figure our way through it, and you'll see some of those changes coming into the website probably little by little. I'm excited about working on the new logo for HEF Connect. It's going to be very youthful and exciting. I will say that. I think HEF, the Home Education Foundations, is a bit more classic. It's a bit more of that red, white, and blue freedom-loving element. But I think with HEF Connect, you're going to see a little bit more, I dare say, cyberpunk, youthful, fun palette coming into it. So we'll blend those two together and watch them clash, and it'll be interesting.
Jason and I are kind of on the opposite ends of the spectrum. We meet in the middle, but he's out there knowing all this technology and is so creative and so bright with all of that. It's like way beyond my understanding. So I just have to ride along.
I'm a nerd. It's hard to. Some people don't speak nerd.
Yeah.
I'm glad that
Half
you've
the
tried
time
to
I don't
learn.
even know what the words mean when you're talking about technology. It's like Greek to me. I don't want to learn it though. I'm too old.
Well, I appreciate you trusting me enough with it to do what we're doing. So we have a couple of questions. Melissa Stanchek says, wondering if there's any news on the wording for the private school and the live classes. Melissa, I'm sorry to report that we haven't heard any updates on that. We are listening though. And Katie Lane says, would love to see more info on this for FESUA kiddos. Yeah, there will be, Katie. So pay, just kind of check in, keep watching the live streams. If this information is helpful to you all, like, again, continue to share this because there are some exciting things going on. I know that, as Brenda said, one of our board members is actively infusing the AM Skills program into her home education instructional program in a way that is very exciting and will allow scholarship funding to be used for some of the programs. And then AM Skills has its own funding that comes from DOE and grants and other things to bring those things together. So really, really exciting stuff. And they're looking to pilot that with her and then see about how to expand it. That's one of the reasons also why we're really keen on watching what happens to the definition for home education instructional programs in statute. That was one of our key concerns this year. And we tried really hard to get that information. There were just pressing concerns that the legislators had that they thought were more important right now. We are going to continue to keep working all of those angles throughout the rest of this year, building relationships, trying to put together a stakeholder workshop and get those presentable so that next year we have a better chance of doing something larger that will address a lot of these things. Well, Brenda, I'm out of content for today.
And I have other things I need to do.
I do
so I'm
too.
sure you do too.
I do. Crystal, you've been listening, a quiet listener today. Is there anything that you want to say, talk about? I know that sometimes you get messages or start messages or patterns kind of emerge or come to you through Facebook or the forum and stuff. Is there anything you want to talk about or address?
No, not really. I've been getting a lot of questions about the status of SB1748 and HB1403. But we already covered that. So all I have to say on that is if there is movement, we'll post an update to keep everybody informed.
Oh, yeah.
We're watching all the trackers and waiting for something to happen. And we'll let people know when we see something change. And other than that, just if you've messaged me, by me I mean HEF because I'm the one who checks most of the messages. If you've messaged HEF or posted in the forum and I haven't responded to you yet, please just be patient with me. I'm going to be catching up on those, but we kind of had a crazy week, so there might be some I haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, and it's time for our kids to get some homeschooling done.
Yes.
Now that we're
their homeschool has been very splotchy the last few weeks because of having to be just ready to go at any moment for whatever.
And maybe I can finally launch that YouTube channel where I talk about how to home educate through tabletop gaming.
I've been trying to get him to do that for years.
I don't know if I'll ever get around to that.
Oh, I have a whole series of games that I used. We didn't even use math curriculum until they started algebra.
There's a ton.
But I do want to say one quick thing. And I'm not sure what the deadline is if this bill passes, but if you're interested in a PEP scholarship for next year, I think they're opening up the application process very soon. It may already be open.
It's not open yet, but soon, yes.
So you need to be watching for that and apply, because there are going to be 40,000 more scholarships this year. And if you want one, you need to get on the wait list.
Yes. Oh, also, as a wrap-up announcement, I posted something over the weekend about Google having a Google Doodle contest. Say that 5 times fast. A Google Doodle contest. So no, Google, I wasn't talking to you. My phone just kicked on. It is a the doodles are the things that pop up whenever you go to the Google search, and they're like, you see like the little animations or drawings or whatever that they do. They're holding a contest. I think is their 25th anniversary, and you can win all kinds of prizes. And the national winner will get $50,000
Ooh.
donated to a 501c3 of their choice. And since many of the home education instructional programs throughout the state are registered as 501c3s, not all, but some, they do qualify. So that is something to keep in mind.
HEF Connect is one.
And HEF Connect as well. So it is now. There are a lot of really good things. And I think I'll wrap up with this. If you know someone who would be a good candidate as a top sponsor and be interested, there is now one more good reason why they could come on board if they've been waiting for something like that. Having that 501c3 status will make it even more useful to them. So I don't have anything else. Delene, thank you for being with us. You're always here. Katie, Melissa, Debbie, Dina, all of you guys. We love seeing you in the comments. We love seeing you here. Without further, I don't have anything else. Do you? All right, we'll hit our top sponsors again. Thank you, FPEA, for being with us through this journey. And we will let you all get back to your beautiful Monday and hope that you enjoy all of this wonderful weather that we're having right now.
Good afternoon.